Welcome, everyone. Thank you for your time today. The purpose of the end-of-year training is to go over the necessary steps for data cleanup so that regulation reports can be submitted to KDE. Here are today's topics: dates and reports, data correction and cleanup, validation of student records, annual program evaluation, directions for completing the summative evaluation. Let's start with dates and reports. Here are some important dates to know. Data and records should be corrected by May the 31st. The following slides will assist you with this process. All GT end-of-year reports are due June the 1st. The last day to enter GT records for the school report card is June the 30th. GT records can be entered after June the 30th, but they will not be counted for the school year. There will be 3 reports to complete for the end of the year. Let's start with the first report. The first report is called Student Groups for the School Report Card Validation Report. This report validates that general intellectual ability, GIA, and students identified for subcategories for specific academic aptitude, such as language arts, math, science, and social studies, have all been correctly identified for the GT program since there are special regulation criteria. The validation of GT records report ensures all GT records are correct for the school report card. And then finally is the GT summative evaluation. In Section 9 of the Gifted Regulation, a summative evaluation and report of progress must be submitted to the Kentucky Department of Education. Therefore, it is a short form for districts to complete regarding their GT programs and overall progress of GT students. The links to the report are posted on the GT Coordinator One-Stop. You cannot save responses and then go back and complete the reports. You may want to print out the reports, review your responses, and then complete the Google Forms. So, one of the reasons that we have data correction and cleanup is to make sure that our data is correct for the school report card, and also to ensure that we're not missing any students to provide services for. So in Infinite Campus, you may need to request permissions to complete the end-of-year processes. If you need these permissions, please contact your Kentucky Student Information System contact, CASIS contact. Some districts are cautious in giving rights to multiple sections of Infinite Campus for several reasons, but they are the person to check with if you would like permissions or rights for certain tools in Infinite Campus. So here are the tools that you'll need. The GT Participation Tool. This is where the GT record is created and stored. Also the Enrollment tab, which is just what it means. It shows you the enrollments where students have been. You need read-only rights for that. Then you'll definitely need the state-published ad hoc filters, because these give you the ability to generate reports that you'll need to clean up your data. Then you'll also need rights to the data integrity tools. And the data integrity tools allow you to compare state and local data sets to ensure you're not missing any GT records. And again, to find the Kentucky Student Information System contact, you can go to the Kentucky Department of Education, KDE's open house, and select your district, and the CASIS person will be listed on your district webpage there. All right, so let's get started with data correction. So once all rights are secured, or a process has been determined to work with the CASIS coordinator, record cleanup may begin. Log into Infinite Campus, proceed to the ad hoc reporting section of Infinite Campus, click Data Export, and then locate the State Published Filters section of ad hoc reporting. So you'll notice here on the bottom screenshot that there is the word State Published. If you click the plus sign beside State Published, you will see different ad hocs that have been pushed down to districts in order to help them with cleanup. These are the state ad hoc filters that you should see under the state published section. I won't read all of those to you. You can see those yourself. If you've got any that are missing, please check with your district cases contact to ensure all rights are in place. Next, let's talk about record cleanup for the General Intellectual Ability, GIA records. And so generally, these are records that do not have the 9th Stay 9 checked or special considerations. So the first step is to select the current school year. Then you want to select Student G&T Invalid General Intellectual Ability filter. Then select Data Export. Next, select the ad hoc for Invalid General Intellectual Ability. Then select Delimited Values, CSV. And then once all the settings are selected, click Export. After clicking Export, a spreadsheet will generate with any students in the district that have an invalid GIA entry. Students marked as GIA must have one of the following criteria indicated by the red arrows below in order to be a valid entry. For each student listed on the spreadsheet, search for the student in the district's IC site. Once the student is found, proceed to that student's GIA GT record. Review the student's GT folder to determine the correct areas to be marked. If the student should have been marked for the 9th Stay 9, then mark 9th Stay 9 and the assessment used. If the student was selected or identified using special considerations, then mark special considerations, click on the appropriate words on the drop-down box, and then select those 3 evidences for which the student was reviewed. Then click Save. If an assessment is not listed on the drop-down menu, contact the GT consultant to ensure the assessment meets the regulation criteria. If the assessment meets regulation criteria, you would select Other from the drop-down menu. Once all the correct boxes have been checked, click Save. Proceed through all the invalid records that are on the spreadsheet, and then generate the report again to ensure there are no more errors in your district. Record cleanup for specific academic aptitude records. This report, or ad hoc, looks for records that do not have the 9th Stay 9 checked as well. If the 9th Stay 9 is not checked, then special considerations should be checked. So the first thing you want to do, again, is select the current school year, then select Student Gifted and Talented Invalid Specific Academic Aptitude, then select Ad hoc, then select Data Export. Ensure all settings are checked as indicated by red arrows, then click Export. After clicking Export, a spreadsheet will generate with any students for the district that have an invalid Specific Academic Aptitude SAA entry. Students marked as SAA must have one of the following criteria indicated by the red arrows below in order to be a valid entry. So you'll see the blue boxes are what are checked on this student's record. The red arrows are what need to be checked in order for the record to be correct, or at least one of the red arrows. The district must check student folder for documentation, then select the correct box. For each of the students listed on the spreadsheet, search for the student in the district's IC site. Once the student is found, proceed to his or her invalid SAA GT record. The GT codes listed for SAA are as follows: 04 for Language Arts, 05 for math, 06 for science, and 07 for social studies. If evidences are not available to determine the student's current placement and the student transferred from another district, contact the GT coordinator from the previous district and request documentation. If the previous district does not have the documentation, please begin to collect that documentation from your district for that child, or if you have any other questions, contact the GT state consultant for assistance. If an assessment is not offered on the drop-down menu, contact the GT state consultant to ensure the assessment meets the regulation criteria. If the assessment meets the regulation criteria, select Other from the drop-down menu. Once all the correct boxes have been checked, click Save. Complete this process for each student. Once each record is updated, generate the report again to ensure all changes are saved to the records and that there are no longer any errors on the report. Record cleanup for invalid GT category. The invalid GT category report, or ad hoc, is a report that shows students who are too young to be formally identified. So what you want to do is you want to select the current year, select Student G&T Invalid Gifted Category Filter, select Ad hoc, Data Export, then select Delimited Values, CVS. Ensure that all the settings are complete as indicated by the red arrows, then click Export. After clicking Export, a spreadsheet will generate with any students for the district that have an invalid gifted category. In order to have a formally identified GT category, a student must be in grades 4 through 12 and have appropriate evidence marked for the identification. Students generated on this report are currently in grades K through 3, but somehow have received a formal identification, such as GIA or SAA. In order to correct these records, the student's invalid record should be changed to PTP. Let's talk about the invalid primary talent pool ad hoc report. This report lists the students who are too old to be in primary talent pool. Don't forget, when creating a new primary talent pool record, to pre-end date the record. Pre-end dating saves you time so that you don't have to go back at the end of the 3rd grade and end date the record. So first begin by generating the G&T Invalid Primary Talent Pool ad hoc report. This report will list all students who are too old to be in PTP. This means students who are in 5th through 12th grade. Using the SSIDs listed on the report, find the student's GT record in Infinite Campus and end date the student's Primary Talent Pool record using June the 30th and then the estimated year the student will end their 3rd grade year. When all students on the list have been corrected, generate the list again to ensure there are no more records to be corrected. So while correcting records, you may run across a record with only 2 evidences. This may seem unusual because you cannot save a record without checking 3 boxes. However, back in August of 2020, the Other checkbox was removed, and therefore some records that had Other with a blank beside it cannot be seen any longer. And so in order to save the record, you may need to look at the student's folder, identify why the student was identified. It may have been for special considerations, and special considerations may have been written beside the Other checkbox. If this is the reason, then, like I said before, review the documentation in the student's file for the missing evidence. If it's special considerations, check the special considerations box. Check the correct word on the drop-down, and then click Save for that record. '22 student groups for the school report card validation report. So once the data has been corrected and cleaned up for GIA, SAA, and PTP, the Google validation form can be completed. For this report, the GT coordinator will initial that the cleanup reports have been generated and all data is correct for the school report card. Again, this is a Google form and the link is posted on the GT Coordinator One Stop. You will need permissions to access the GT Coordinator One Stop, but according to records, all of the GT coordinators in our state should have permissions for this one-stop site. But if there is an issue, please contact me. Let's next talk about validation of student records. In order to ensure data is correct for the school report card, we must validate records are correct between state and local data sets. Also, this process can be used to check for transfer students during the year. You could also work with your cases contact to create an ad hoc that looks for transfer students. This ad hoc might help you ensure GT transfer students are not missed. Let's get started. Before completing the validation of GT records, review the Google form validation of student records attached. It won't be attached to an email. It will be a link in the GT One Stop. This form will request state and local data for each gifted category. The numbers for state and local data, GT records, should match. For the data to be compared, two spreadsheets will be generated, one for state data and one for local data. To ensure all GT data is correct for the program data in school report card, districts must review and then validate their information is correct. In order to correct and update the records, the following process should occur. Compare a comparison between state and local data sets. Then if there are any missing student records on the local data set, student records must be located and then added or corrected through the correct transfer process in Infinite Campus. And then once the data is correct, the GT coordinator will complete the validation of GT records reports using the link to the Google form. Let's quickly review the steps for validation. You want to log into Infinite Campus, scroll down towards the bottom of the page under Index and click Data Integrity Tools. Select Data Validation. Next, select Reports, then Definition Group Extract, and then you will complete two extracts using this tool, the state data set and a local data set, which is data from your district. When generating the report, the District Edition sends a request to State Edition for a state report of the data in your district. The report is sent back to the district in the State Report Output area once compiled. Please remember to check the status periodically because it will not be generated immediately. Then you want to select these from the drop-down boxes: Gifted and Talented Group, Report Format CVS, State Dataset. After making selections, click Generate Report. When generating the report, the District Edition sends a request to the State Edition for a state report of the data in your district. The report is sent back to the district in the State Report Output area. Once compiled, please remember to check the status periodically. Once completed, select Get the Report under the Download column. Once the state data set is generated, save it as a Microsoft Excel file named state_GT_ with the current school year. This will give a list of all students in the district currently identified for gifted and talented services in the state edition of Infinite Campus. Let's talk about generating the local data set. Select these from the drop-down boxes: Gifted and Talented Group, Report Format CSV, Local Data Set, and after making selections, click Generate Report. Generate the local data set and save it as a Microsoft Excel file and title it district_GT_ and the current school year. This will provide a list of all the students in the district currently identified for gifted and talented services. Next, you'll want to compare state and local data sets. You'll want to look and see, are the same number of records on each spreadsheet? If not, what is different? You will want to make a list of all the discrepancies. If records appear on the district but not state report, run a manual sync at the district level. You'll need to talk to your cases person to do this. Check that all records for each student are present. If discrepancies are present, correct by using the troubleshooting scenarios on the next several slides. If troubleshooting scenarios do not help, contact the GT State Consultant for assistance. Complete the validation process and correct any errors. If the student records match for each GT category, complete the Google Form GT Records Validation Report by June the 1st. If the lists are different, first utilize the troubleshooting steps. If the steps do not correct the problem, contact the GT State Consultant for assistance. To submit the report, there should be no discrepancies between state and local GT records, unless the discrepancies are due to the student being enrolled in another district. For example, you may have a student that doesn't show up on your district report because the student was identified after they left your district. So if this is the case, we'll talk about that in the next several slides. Troubleshooting discrepancy scenario number 1. If the student appears on the state but not district list and has an end date, verify that the student has moved and make a note of the discrepancy on the last response of the state validation of GT records verification form. List the student's SSID on the state list and simply note the difference in numbers by adding an asterisk next to the number and a note at the bottom. Please see the example listed on this slide. So for an example, SSID number 234567 appears on the state list but not on the district list. The student moved out of the district on November the 22nd and the date. So what has happened here is, like I said previously, is that the student probably was identified after leaving your district. And so that's why there is an end date on the student's record for the state validation list. Troubleshooting discrepancy scenario number 2. In this scenario, the student appears on the state list but not the district list and does not have an end date. Look at the child's GT record in Infinite Campus. If the student does not have a GT record for the district, attempt to import the record using the Infinite Campus Student Records Transfer standard from the prior district. In order to know where to send the records transfer, the district must know where the student was last enrolled. If you're unable to see where the student was last enrolled, contact the GT consultant for assistance. Scenario number 3. The student appears on the district list, but not on the state list. Ask your cases person to manually sync the student's record to the state. Run the state list again to ensure the student is on the list. If the student is not on the list, contact the GT State Consultant. Let's talk about the process for student records that are missing evidence. For any new students imported Contact the previous district for their GT student records. And by records in this sense, I mean their identification documentation. If you're unsure of the student's previous district, please contact the GT State Consultant for assistance. The KDE Open House Directory lists the GT coordinator for each district. If the previous district does not have the GT record, and really the word on the slide should be documentation, identification documentation, the district should begin to collect identification documentation for the student. According to 704 KAR 3:285, sections 9, 11, and 12, for students to participate in the primary talent pool or qualify in grades 4 through 12 as a gifted student, they must meet the regulation criteria. The student is now enrolled in the district and therefore is the district's responsibility. Let's talk about validation of GT record report. Complete the validation of GT records when state and local records have been compared, notes have been taken on those students who had end dates to include on the report, missing student GT records have been imported, and requests sent to previous districts for copies of identification documentation, and GSSPs in progress reports also have been sent to the district, the new district. For the report, unduplicated numbers are needed for each gifted category and a total unduplicated count of gifted students for the district. That will be at the very end of the report. Let's next talk about the annual program evaluation. This is the time of year to start thinking about collecting data for the annual program evaluation. Collecting this data could help your program for the next school year, especially if it is shared with your school and district leadership. If the district does not have procedures for the program evaluation, now is a good time to articulate the actions for each of these areas of the program evaluation. Most Kentucky School Board policies and procedures state the GTC will collect this information. The district will need to review progress reports from the current school year for the summative evaluation. Districts will need to break down the data into groups of progress by looking at grades 4 and 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. Districts will need to know, did most of the students in these grade levels meet, not meet, or exceed according to the progress reports? Once progress is analyzed, the district should plan next steps and should use the information for school and district instructional plans. Don't forget to document this process by saving agendas, meeting notes, and other resources used in the review of overall student progress. Use the district procedures to collect feedback from students, parents, and faculty about the GT program. Then analyze the feedback to assess next steps for the program. If in the past the district has not received much feedback, you might try reaching out to someone in the stakeholder group to ask how this process could be improved. You might try multiple ways to collect feedback. This might include a parent meeting where the survey is given and participants take the survey at the meeting. Don't forget to save surveys, meeting discussions where the results were analyzed and discussed. Community involvement could be defined as how the GT program is involved in the community and how the community is a part of the GT program. For the program evaluation, there could be discussions with notes taken and saved about community involvement. These notes could be saved in documents such as flyers, invitations, newspaper articles could be saved as artifacts for this component of the program evaluation. Cost effectiveness. This is another item which must be addressed as part of the program evaluation. For this item, it would be good to schedule time with the finance administrator to get a copy of the GT Munis report. The report could be reviewed with supervisors and the GT committee. Discussions could involve how the money was spent or other funds needed to address the needs of the program and any other important topics. The incorporation of gifted education into the regular school program. Again, there should be a discussion of the GT program and how it is part of the district's overall instructional program. There could be discussions based on data and stakeholder feedback about any modifications that are needed. Overall quality of instruction and program personnel credentials. In this part of the evaluation, there could be a review of GT staff and regular education staff's credentials. Discussions might include certifications of the staff, hiring of additional staff, and pairing of needs of students to staff. Last but not least is the future program directions and modifications. So this part of the program evaluation would be an opportunity to address all the areas in the program that you have taken data on. A slide presentation could be created for the presentation to share with stakeholders or to share with your supervisors, the SBDM, any other people that you might want to share this information with. And then from the data gathered and discussed, the future of the program and modifications could also be analyzed and discussed. And then next steps planned for the next school year. Don't forget to document. This next part is school and district instructional planning. So according to the Gifted Regulation, Section 5, Subsection 2, it states that data collected in the annual program evaluation must be used in the school and district instructional planning process. This means that data could be used in the creation of the continuous district improvement plan or the continuous school improvement plan or other instructional plans that are made for GT students. The main takeaway here is that you have gathered data from the components that we talked about previously, and based on that data, instructional plans will be made for your GT students in your district. Let's next talk about directions for completing the summative evaluation. You may want to print out the GT summative evaluation before completing it. As stated earlier, once a Google form is started, you cannot save it and return to finish it at a later time. Once you have completed data cleanup, data validation of GT records, and the annual program evaluation, then you will be ready to complete the summative evaluation. The summative evaluation is a short answer Google form. The report can't be saved and completed later, as previously stated. You may want to print it out, as said before, and you definitely want to save a copy of the report for district records. As we wrap up today, I just want to remind you that all the end-of-year EOY reports and materials will be posted on the GT Coordinator One Stop. If you need or would like ELA credit for participating in this training today, please click on the link that's in the PowerPoint that will be posted on the GT Coordinator One Stop, or use the QR code to link to the ELA credit. Thank you again for attending. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm always glad to help.